Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Forrester Creations' luxurious corridors, where designs of exquisite gowns adorned the walls and the air carried the faint aroma of luxury textiles, anxiety had been building for weeks like a storm over the Los Angeles skyline. Eric Forrester, the father whose visionary plans had created an empire from nothing, sat at his magnificent desk, his fingers quivering slightly as he held a pencil. His recent health concerns had made him vulnerable, but his spirit was unwavering. He had poured his heart and soul into one final collection, a masterwork that he hoped would demonstrate that he still had passion in his blood. However, his son Ridge, the protective yet ambitious heir, viewed things differently. Ridge decided it was time for his father to take a step back and enjoy the results of his labor, without the stress that could land him back in the hospital. The feud had been simmering since Ridge staged a surprise retirement party complete with champagne toasts and speeches celebrating Eric's legacy. What was intended as a celebration felt like a betrayal to the older Forrester. Eric had stormed off that day, swearing not to be marginalized, yet the words said echoed in the empty store. Days later, with the holiday season and family reunions coming, Eric brought Ridge to the office for a private conversation. Donna, Eric's faithful wife, hovered nearby, her eyes filled with concern as Brooke, Ridge's off-again soulmate, attempted to mediate from the sidelines. Ridge's daughter, Steffi, watched nervously, knowing how these father-son confrontations may affect the entire family. Ridge walked into the office with his usual confident stride, his tailored suit immaculate, but his expression revealed a mix of apprehension and resolve. "Dad, we need to talk about this," he said, closing the door behind him. Eric looked up from his sketching, his eyes keen despite the tiredness on his face. "Talk. You've already made your decision for me, Ridge. That party, it was humiliating." Ridge shook his head and moved closer. "It wasn't meant to be. We all love you. We're worried about your health. You've been through so much, the near-death experience, the recovery. Forrester is in good hands now. Steffi and we've got this." Eric slapped his pencil down, the sound reverberating sharply. "Good hands? This company is my life, Ridge. I built it from the ground up with your mother. Every stitch, every collection, it's in my blood." His voice raised, laced with grief and indignation. Ridge paced, attempting to keep his voice steady. "I know that, Dad. No one respects what you've done more than I do. But look at you. You're pushing too hard again. Remember what the doctors said? Stress could." Eric stopped, gently getting up, his frame still dominating despite his age. "Could what? Finish me off? Is that what you're waiting for? To take full control without any guilt?" The words hung heavy, searing Ridge like a slap. He stopped pacing, his face flushed with rage and pain. "That's not fair, Dad. I'm trying to protect you. You asked me to step up, to lead. Now you're fighting me every step." Eric's brows tightened, his voice sinking to a stern, purposeful tone. The moment had arrived, the one that would cut deepest. He moved forward, holding the edge of the desk, and said the 6 words that would infuriate his son and end the fragile peace. "You're not my real son anyway." The room fell silent, as if the air had been sucked out. Ridge froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. Those 6 bitter syllables were called a revelation years ago. Ridge was not Eric's biological child, but the result of an affair between Stephanie and Massimo Marone. Eric had reared him, loved him as his own, forgiven the deception, and they had re-established their link several times. But in this moment of pure frustration, feeling cornered and dismissed, Eric wielded that old truth like a blade. It wasn't just biology. It was about legacy, control, and a deep-seated worry that his empire would crumble without his leadership. Ridge stumbled back a step, his face pale. What did you just say?" His voice trembled to barely above a whisper. Betrayal, hatred, and heartbreak surged inside him, and rage couldn't even begin to describe it. All those years of proving himself, stepping into Eric's footsteps while honoring his name, came crashing down. After everything? After I fought for this family for you? Eric's expression softened with sadness, his palms stretching out as if to retract his words. Ridge, I didn't mean, however, the damage had already occurred. Ridge's eyes flared. You did. In your heart, when it matters most. That's what you think. That I'm not a real Forrester. He looked away, his shoulders stiff, holding back tears. The office, once a haven for creativity, suddenly felt like a war. Brooke, who had been listening from the doorway, raced in, horrified. Eric, how could you? Donna said, covering her mouth. Steffi felt her world tilt when she overheard from the hall that her father, the man she idolized, had been reduced to an outsider in the eyes of his own father. The fallout spread rapidly. Ridge raced out, slamming the door shut, leaving Eric slumped in his chair, the weight of his outburst crushing him. In the days that followed, the Forrester mansion became a boiling pot of unresolved sorrow. Ridge withdrew to his design table, expressing his wrath in violent designs, but every line reminded him of Eric's impact. He confided in Taylor, his ex-wife and confidant, who listened with understanding and reminded him of the family's tumultuous past. Eric scared Ridge. Losing control frightens him more than death. Ridge couldn't shake the words. They resurfaced in his imagination during sleepless nights, generating hatred that threatened to ruin their relationship for good. Eric, meantime, was drowning in guilt. He strolled the deserted corridors of Forrester at night, marveling at his final selection concealed behind garment bags. Donna tried to console him, encouraging him to apologize, but pride held him back. He needs to understand that this is my legacy, Eric mumbled. But deep inside, he knew those 6 words had crossed a line, resurrecting long-scarred wounds. He recalled raising Ridge, his joy in seeing him develop into a skilled designer, and his forgiveness following the paternity announcement. Why did he say that? Fear. Pure, crippling fear of irrelevance. The family split along typical lines. Steffi sided with Ridge and confronted her grandfather gently but strongly. You hurt him, Grandad. Deeply. Thomas, ever devoted to his father, repeated the sentiment, while the other siblings, Thorne and Felicia, called from a distance, disappointed. Brooke pleaded with Eric to make amends, drawing similarities to her own turbulent relationship with the Forresters. Words like that, they don't fade. Even Carter, the level-headed COO, spoke up during board meetings, detecting the undercurrent of discord threatening the company's stability. As Christmas came, tensions rose at the annual Forrester meeting. The mansion shone with lights and decorations, and carols played softly, yet the atmosphere was tense. Ridge arrived late, and his embrace with Eric was stiff and brief. There were toasts to family harmony, but no one made eye contact. Eric unveiled his grand design, a gorgeous gown representing resilience and legacy, but the ovation seemed hollow to him without Ridge's real enthusiasm. In a quiet moment by the fireside, father and son finally confronted each other. Ridge spoke first, in a harsh voice. Those words, Dad, they cut deeper than anything. Eric's eyes welled with tears. I was wrong. You're my son, in every way that matters. I raised you, loved you, and I'm proud of you. Ridge nodded slowly, his wrath fading but not gone. I just wanted to protect you, but maybe I was also protecting my place. They clasped tentatively at first, then tightly, the bond eroding but not breaking. However, the fury lingered, casting a shadow over future actions. Ridge increased his efforts at the helm, proving his usefulness, while Eric discreetly prepared his return, determined not to drift away. The 6 agonizing words marked a watershed moment, pushing both men to confront fears about heritage, love, and what it truly means to be family in the competitive world of fashion and Forrester drama. The rippling effects affected everyone. Brooke was concerned about Ridge's sharper edge, worrying it would push him away again. Steffi strengthened her relationship with her father, gently altering power dynamics at work. Donna stood by Eric through his regret, their love a gentle anchor. Even outsiders, such as Finn and Hope, noticed the difference, noting on the strange coolness at family functions. Months later, as new collections debuted, the confrontation's wounds impacted designs, bolder, more expressive items that reflected anguish and redemption. Ridge added aspects from Eric's concealed sketches, including a silent olive branch. Eric, in turn, mentored from afar, and his wisdom was sought once more. But those 6 words lingered in quiet moments, a reminder that even the most resilient families are on the verge of irrevocable harm. In the end, the wrath developed a deeper, albeit apprehensive, regard. Ridge learnt to listen more, and Eric to relax a little. Forrester Creations persevered, as always, but the human cost of those devastating words altered the dynasty in ways no one could have anticipated. Love, ambition, and forgiveness were linked, as they had been for decades in the bold and magnificent world of the Forresters. The air in the Forrester living room seemed thicker than normal, as if the walls were holding their breath. Afternoon light streamed through the towering windows, forming long shadows on the smooth flooring. Ridge stood near the hearth, his posture tense and his arms crossed tightly across his chest. He'd been rehearsing the talk in his thoughts over and over, sensing that something was wrong, that the peace he'd been holding was going to crumble. When Eric entered the room, leaning slightly on his cane, Ridge straightened and braced himself reflexively. He wasn't sure why, but he got a feeling that whatever Eric had to say would be difficult. Eric's face was drawn, and the familiar warmth in his gaze was replaced with a terrible determination. He took a few steps forward before stopping, as if the weight of his words was already bearing down on him. For a moment, neither guy spoke. The silence was long and unpleasant, packed with years of shared history, triumphs, betrayals, love, and disappointment. Ridge finally broke the silence, his voice low and hesitant, asking what was wrong. Eric did not respond soon away. Instead, he stared at his son with a mix of sadness and disappointment, which set Ridge on edge. Eric had worn many expressions over the years: pride, fury, joy, but this one stung worse than all of them combined. He took a slow breath to compose himself, then delivered 6 words that would reverberate in Ridge's memory long after the conversation had ended. "I no longer trust you, Ridge." The words lingered in the air, piercing and merciless. Ridge looked at his father, shocked, as if he hadn't heard correctly. His mouth opened and closed again. For a brief while, his look was one of complete incredulity. Eric, the man who had always believed in him and backed him even when he was wrong, had just taken away the one thing Ridge had always taken for granted. Ridge's amazement swiftly turned to rage. His jaw tensed, and his eyes flashed as he took a step forward. He demanded to know what Eric meant, claiming that this was unjust and that he had done everything he could for the family and the business. His voice became louder with each word, the pain driving his wrath. How could Eric say that after everything they'd gone through? Eric responded without raising his voice. Ridge was enraged even more by her calm, steady demeanor. Eric stated that trust was more than simply intentions. It was also about choices, and Ridge's recent decisions had gone too far. He described decisions made behind closed doors, alliances created without transparency, and a pattern of behavior that suggested Ridge prioritized his own desires over the well-being of the family. Each sentence seemed like another blow to Ridge, right where it hurt the most. Ridge scoffed, shaking his head in incredulity. He accused Eric of exaggerating his feelings and allowing others to influence his thinking. He insisted that everything he had done was for Forrester Creations, the legacy Eric had established. Even as he spoke, there was a glimmer of doubt in his eyes. Ridge understood deep down that his father was not speaking lightly. Eric would not have spoken those things unless he sincerely meant them. The conversation swiftly escalated, bringing years of unresolved animosity to the surface. Ridge reopened old wounds, reminding Eric of moments when he felt ignored, second-guessed, or unfairly condemned. He accused Eric of pushing him to unattainable standards and never completely letting go of power. Eric listened with a painful but determined gaze, and when Ridge finally halted, Eric spoke with calm honesty. He recognized that as a father, he had made mistakes and that his demands had sometimes trumped his empathy. But he also made it plain that this was not about the past, but about the present. He warned Ridge that leadership requires humility, accountability, and respect for others, which he worried Ridge was losing sight of. Hearing this simply increased Ridge's rage, as it was dangerously near to the truth. Ridge turned away and paced the room like a trapped beast. His hands went through his hair as he battled to control the emotional storm that was screaming within him. Anger, hurt, betrayal, and terror collided all at once. He couldn't take the thought that his own father regarded him as untrustworthy. The accusation went deeper than any rivalry or love betrayal ever could. When Ridge returned to confront Eric, his voice was colder, more controlled, but no less passionate. He reminded Eric that such statements had consequences and that questioning his integrity may irreparably harm the family. He questioned Eric whether that was really what he wanted and if he was willing to lose his son over a mistake. For a single second, it appeared that Eric might hesitate. But Eric refused to back down. He claimed that once shattered, trust could not be regained through threats or defensiveness. It necessitated introspection and adjustment. He told Ridge he loved him, but love does not imply mindless faith. If anything, it meant being honest, even if the truth hurt. Those words seemed to exacerbate the gulf between them. Ridge laughed sadly, his tone hollow and harsh. He accused Eric of taking sides and surrounding himself with people who did not understand what it takes to keep the company going. He felt surrounded, attacked, and misunderstood. In his mind, he was the one who bore the burden of the Forrester name, making difficult decisions that no one else wanted to make. Having his father disbelieve him seemed like the ultimate betrayal. As their disagreement progressed, the emotional intensity dragged in memories of previous conflicts. Old rivalries, sexual entanglements, and power struggles appeared to lurk in the background, impacting every word spoken. Eric reminded Ridge that when lessons are not learnt, history repeats itself. Ridge snapped back, saying he was tired of being criticized for decisions he believed were necessary based on his prior sins. Eric's 6 words echoed through the entire confrontation. Ridge was unable to avoid them, no matter how hard he tried to argue or divert. They gnawed at him, compelling him to consider the idea that he had crossed a line. However, admitting that seemed impossible in the heat of the moment. Pride and anguish would not permit it. Eventually, the argument reached a breaking point. Eric, looking fatigued, informed Ridge that he wanted space. He stated that prolonging the discourse in this form would only create further harm. Ridge viewed this as rejection, another indication that his father was shutting him off. He responded that perhaps space was precisely what they needed, that Eric might understand how much he relied on him once he walked away. Ridge said the words with anger, but as soon as they left his mouth, he felt a pang of sorrow. Eric's shoulders fell slightly, and for the first time, his voice quivered as he responded. He explained that this was not about reliance, but about respect and trust. Without them, no familial or professional partnership could survive. Eric then turned and slowly left the room, without saying anything further. Ridge was left alone, and the silence became unbearable. The fire crackled softly in the background, mocking the anguish within him. He dropped to the edge of the sofa, his rage gradually giving way to a crushing sensation of loss. He repeated Eric's words, each time feeling their weight more deeply. For the first time, he considered whether his father might be correct. Ridge's initial wrath eased with time, becoming more complicated. He reflected on his recent judgments, how he had moved forward without consulting others, confident that he knew best. He recalled times when people he cared about sought to express their worries but were dismissed. The discovery was painful, disconcerting, and impossible to ignore. Eric was alone in his study, glancing at the old photographs on the shelf. Pictures of Ridge as a child, smiling proudly beside him, reminded Eric of a time when trust had come naturally. His heart wrenched as he wondered how they'd gotten to this point. Speaking those 6 words had been one of the most difficult things he'd ever done, but he felt it was important. He understood that sometimes the truth has to hurt in order to heal. Their confrontation would undoubtedly have far-reaching consequences. Ridge's rage and wounded pride threatened to boil over into his interactions with others, perhaps sparking new disputes and resurrecting old wounds. Eric's decision to confront his son so directly may alter the balance of power within the family and the corporation, compelling everyone to take sides. The consequences had only just begun. Ridge's issue lay in deciding what to do next. Would he hold on to his anger, allowing it to harden into resentment, or would he confront the painful facts his father had revealed? The 6 cruel words had shook him to his core, robbing him of the confidence he had always possessed. Whether he liked it or not, he had reached a crossroads. As night fell and the house was still, Ridge returned to the window, peering out into the darkness. He felt the weight of his legacy bear down on him more than ever before. Eric's words rang through the silence, not as an accusation, but as a challenge. Ridge understood deep down that how he replied would shape not only his relationship with his father, but also the future of the whole Forrester family.